All right, everyone. So we're going to do the DIY tote bag. Now, I'm going to do it kind of cool, interesting. I just saw the movie, the reboot of It, or whatever, reboot, redone, I don't know. I saw it in the theaters. So I thought I would do an It inspired DIY bag for, I don't know if my son wants to use it or I'll give it to a friend. But, try and make your bag fun and cool and interactive for your kids. Here's some ideas I have. So if you, and you can do this like really cheaply, like don't think that you need to go out and spend money on Halloween printed fabric. Try and keep it budget friendly if you are on a budget. So I have some plain yellow fabric. I have some red scraps that I'll use for the balloon. And what I was saying about having it interactive with your kids, like if you have a blank piece of fabric and you can use leftover fabric from your sewing kit or old pillowcases, old blankets, old sheets, old curtains, anything will work for this bag because it's just going to hold your candy. Don't think too much into it. So as I was saying, I want to make it interactive for the kids. In this case, I'm doing my own bag, but if I'm going to make another one later on down the line and let my boys decorate their bag. So here's some things you can do. Like if you have stencils, you could use these tulip color shots. These are aerosol paint cans that you can spray and make your own design. Also have tulip paint. You could draw pictures with them, or fabric markers. You write down Happy Halloween or any other saying or draw pictures on it. So, get creative with it. For this particular bag, again, it's very open to however you want to make it. I'm going to do rather a large, long rectangular shaped bag, or you could do a square bag. And I have a tip for you if you want to do a square bag, but you don't want to go through the trouble of measuring out, equal sides and all this garbage. So what you can do is if you have an odd an odd shaped piece of fabric, you take your fabric and from one corner, you bring it up to the other corner. Let me try and pull this and just meet the edges like so. Just meet it edge to edge. So you're gonna have like a big triangle, right? And then once you do that, lop off the excess over here. Mine was a little more crooked than I thought, so I'm just correcting that, but I'm gonna cut all this excess off. So when I open this, then I have a perfect square. Of course, this is a really huge piece. I was just kind of showing you how you can get a perfect square without having to go through too much trouble of, like I said, measuring out 4 equal sides and then having to cut it. And this just works so much quicker. So I'm just gonna fix this because, like I said, this piece of fabric I had was just like super crooked, and then of course it's knit, so it shifts all over the place. So I'm gonna do a rectangular piece. I'm just gonna fold this in half. Okay, so I figured that my bag was just a little too long right now, so I chopped that top part off. Again, it's just a treat bag. Don't get too hung up on measurements, how I'm doing it. My kids don't get a lot of candy for Halloween when they trick or treat, so that's why I chopped off that bag because it was just too big. Of course, if you guys go all out and hardcore and you need pillowcase size bags to handle the amount of candy you bring in on a Halloween night, then of course please make your bag bigger. But this is something that's customizable to you and your Halloween night lifestyle. Okay, so I made my bag a little bit shorter. Again, we're going to pin it if you had folded it, and then one side's the fold. I'm going to sew it in an L shape. I'm going to do I'd say 1/2 inch seam allowance. Since this is knit, right now you will see me on my machine with my walking foot, and I will have a stretch needle in it because that just makes your life so much easier when you're working with knits or stretchy fabrics. Of course, tip, sometimes knits don't respond well to stretch needles. I don't know. I mean, I know when I'm supposed to use stretch needles and ballpoint needles, but just sometimes I have to interchange them and eventually one of the two will work. I don't know. It's just strange like that. So either ballpoint needle or stretch needle if you have a stretchy fabric or knit. And if not, universal needle will work just fine, and your regular straight edge foot. So let's go ahead and sew the L, and then we'll get to decorating. So here I am, as I told you, I have my walking foot, which looks like this. My stretch needle, I've left it in there. Some tips that I do want to make you aware of if you don't already know this. You see how on my machine I have a plate and it's got some little lines? These lines help you stay straight when you sew. When you're sewing and you want to sew straight, you never ever look at the needle. You're always staring at one of these grid lines. In this case, I'm doing 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I keep the edge of my fabric always aligned with the number 4 line. That's just how mine is. Yours will probably have a little more detailed plate if it's a newer machine, but mine's old and it's as simple as it gets. So yeah, so always try and keep the edge of your fabric aligned with one of these lines, depending on your seam allowance, and that'll help you sew straight. So watch, I'm just gonna sew it a little bit. I'm trying to keep that edge aligned with the edge of my fabric. You see how I'm doing this? See how much, if you're doing knits, how much a walking foot just makes your life so much easier. Okay, you see on this side, my line's straight. So I'm gonna do that as an L, remember, okay? As you can see right here on this still photo, what I did is what's called clipping the corners. Whenever you have a square, rectangle, those things have 90-degree angles with the stitches intersecting. You do want to chop off a little triangle as close to the intersection of stitching as possible, not into it, not past it, because you will make a hole in your bag, but just as close as you can get without touching those stitches. Chop off a little triangle so when you turn your bag inside out, the point of that 90-degree angle on the right side of your fabric is still perfect and pointy and sharp and 90-degree-ish instead of being rounded. And that's just a pro tip for you. And as you see right here, what I'm doing, and I'm just prepping the bag because I'm going to start decorating the outside with the letters and my little balloon that I am going to cut out, as you'll see in a moment. With my red, there's my Aleene's tacky glue that I'll be using to glue down the balloon shape to my bag. Remember, in this tutorial, we're trying to wing it. Okay, do not be constricted by, like, open your imagination. Don't be constricted like, oh, I have to make a pattern and I have to buy one and it has to be perfect. No, you can make the bag look just fine by winging it. And that's also what this tutorial is about. So you see here, I'm just cutting out my balloon. This is neoprene fabric, if you've already forgotten. I have some scraps of neoprene that I got at Mood Fabrics like a long time ago. Awesome, lovely. I just got to figure out where I'm going to put it. I figured I should open up that newspaper a little wider so I don't have any bleeding through to the other side of my projects if I go over the edge of that. And here I am just pasting it, just putting little dots all over the place. You don't want to over glue it because then it starts seeping out the sides and then it just doesn't look as good as it could have. Using my arm, using the bottle as a rolling pin, just because it's better not to get the glue on your fingers, because later on you might start getting fingerprint smudges all over your light colored fabric, if you're using light colored fabric. Now I'm using black tulip paint to draw the string on my balloon, and as you'll see in the moment as well, I'm going to be writing out the letters with the same puffy paint. This is my preference, but again, this is your bag. If you want your kids to just draw their own happy Halloween pictures or phrases with the fabric markers or spray paint, let them do it. They're going to have a lot of fun doing this.
No, Judy, no.
You probably hear my kid yelling in the background. I apologize. And here, I already kind of let it dry. You're noticing that I was using red tulip paint, and what I'm doing is just sealing the edges, like it's kind of joining the edges of that red balloon with the yellow fabric, and it's just going to seal it because I didn't end up sewing it. So I'm just sealing it, and it makes it look great if you don't intend on sewing it, and you just have the glue holding the balloon. Let us continue the wonderful magic of the bag. Okay, so last we left off, I'm continuing this a couple days later. I finished, decorating it and all that stuff. I know you can't really see it. Now, with this tutorial, I do want to help you break out of the habit that you are confined and restricted to only using patterns to create something. So this tutorial is just like a lot of just being comfortable with just guesstimating the shape of what you want, winging it. You can do it even if you are a beginner. If you can cut out 2 square pieces of paper and glue them to make a pouch, it's the same concept. You can make yourself a very simple bag. Now in this case, look here, let's see. So I have all this space to work with, to fold down how, to finish the top part of my bag. Yours may differ. Maybe you want to fold yours in, a lot to where if you have like a photo or something, you only have this much. Me, I'm just going to fold it like whatever, just to do like the hemming on it, because I don't want to leave this raw. I do want it somewhat attractive, if any, if I can, And I'm just doing this on the top. Normally, I would sew this way, like this, but I'm really lazy and my bobbin string is purple and I want the top to be yellow. So, because when you're sewing, this is what's going to show. When you're sewing like this, you're going to see this one and you're going to see this one under here. So that's why I'm sewing it like that. I know it's terrible. I do the worst tutorials in the world. But again, you are capable of doing this. Now, another mention, I think I said this in the beginning, but notice I said if you're working with knits or stretchy fabric, it's so much better to use a walking foot, which is what this is, and you will see how it behaves, how it walks like that, because otherwise if you use another one, the machine's just going to be pulling it, and then it's going to make your stitching all like wonky and crooked, and you'll have snap stitches. Like it's not, like it doesn't work. Like I know some people can do it, but I just don't like that. So let's go ahead and just finish the top now. Here, let me put this on the biggest stitch. See how that walking foot is behaving? Now with me, I can do this and not really have to use pins. If you are comfortable with using pins, go for it. So at least this part is straight. Don't over pin it, because remember, your pins is not what's going to keep your bag together, it's the stitching. I always see this a lot with students when I teach. They like to over pin things, and it's really a waste of time. If you have like a square, I mean really 2 pins per side is sufficient enough. You don't have to over pin it. It's not going to shift that badly. So don't worry about it. See how underneath is my bobbin thread, which is purple, and on top is yellow. Okay, so next up, let's go ahead and insert our little straps, and then we'll be good to go. So I found some straps. These are just some salvaged nylon straps from an old backpack my son had, and I thought I'm so glad that I saved them because I would not have had enough to work with right now. But these are just the right length. Now, you can use any ribbon that you want, okay? Any length. If you want it just to be like a tote, like short handles, or you want it really long so you could put it, you know, like a sling bag over the shoulder or across the chest. That's up to you. So measure how long you want it and then just have 2 equal pieces of that. If you decide to go with nylon straps, like the ones they use for backpacks, see how it's kind of fuzzy and frayed on top? Before you go and sew it in, what you want to do so that way this doesn't fray and then your whole thing starts falling apart, you take a lighter and you run it very slowly so that way it melts, and then it'll seal it so that way it doesn't fray anymore, okay? Okay, that one's finished. I don't have to worry about that one. Oh, that one's fuzzy as hell. Okay. See how they're just kind of melting? I'm not putting it directly on the flame, just close enough to where I can control and see how much the nylon in this, okay, and that one's fine. How much the nylon in it is melting away. So I'll let that cool just for like 1 second, and then I'm going to sew the straps on. Here, let me straighten this up. Oh, I know, excuse my sewing room, it's just a mess. And then we're going to sew them on each side. So this side and this side. So I'm going to sew them to the side across on my bag. I believe I've mentioned this. If you've seen some of my other tutorials, whenever you're sewing on like a strap to something else, you always want to do the square with the little X inside, and that just helps keep it nice and strong for whatever items you're putting in the bag. That'll help with the tension and pressure so that way your strap does not snap off. See, when I turn, I keep my needle down and I lift the foot, and then I just move my fabric around. That's all you gotta do. And then now I'm gonna go across the square to start making my X. And then I just sew over the same part that I sewed right now, stitch in the ditch, back on that one so I can come across and make my other X. And one back stitch just to finish that off. Okay. There you go. See, can you see the X? So that's what I'm going to do. So one strap. I'm going to have this just like a little tote, a short handled little tote. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we don't get that crazy with the candy, so I'm not going to need this massive bag. You, on the other hand, might differ if you guys go hard on that kind of stuff. So let me finish sewing all these straps and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done.